Just yesterday, we got one of the biggest leaks in gaming ever. Bethesda's entire planned game slate, private emails between executives, and even several new Xbox console iterations were leaked as a Phil Spencer deposition was uploaded, and in the attachments of that file was a ton of this confidential information. The file was uploaded as a part of the ongoing FTC versus Microsoft court case, as Microsoft attempts to buy Activision Blizzard and the FTC is suing to block it. Due to the damage this caused Microsoft, there were a ton of people immediately assuming that the FTC was to blame here. But the judge in this case has made it abundantly clear that no, Microsoft actually leaked all of their internal documents themselves. As The Verge does report, the court ordered the Federal Trade Commission and Microsoft to provide the court with a secure cloud link to trial exhibits with redactions that met the court's recent orders. Microsoft provided a link on September 14th, and the court uploaded the exhibits from there. So the court's basically saying here that Microsoft provides the file, and it's not their job to screen these, they just uploaded that exact same file that Microsoft had claimed was redacted, except it obviously wasn't, as a bunch of confidential information was contained within the document. So effectively, Microsoft didn't realize they had a bunch of files attached to their document and accidentally leaked them themselves. And one of the directors at the FTC even had to come out and make it abundantly clear that the FTC had nothing to do with this leak, and even the court themselves have deleted everything posted thus far that's attached to this case. Not even just the leaked documents, but all documents related to the court case have been deleted. So of course, this is brutal. Someone almost certainly lost their job, and perhaps several people lost their job over this. But even beyond that, Microsoft has now responded to the leak both publicly and privately. Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, has said, "We've seen the conversation around old emails and documents. It's hard to see our team's work shared this way because so much has changed and there's so much to be excited about right now and in the future. We will share the real plans when we are ready." And this is Phil Spencer basically just doing damage control. It seems like this is going to be particularly relevant to the Bethesda leaks, as we're basically seeing really old plans from Bethesda for an Oblivion remaster, some of their old timelines for major game releases, and of course the Fallout 3 remaster. And this does create a super weird situation for both Xbox and Bethesda now, because realistically a good chunk of this information is just inaccurate. Like when it comes to this Fallout 3 remaster, they wrote this plan for a Fallout 3 remaster to come out in 2024 in 2020. They were predicting 4 years into the future, and just in normal circumstances, a 4-year forward prediction is going to be decently questionable. But then COVID raged on for several more years, and of course, Bethesda got bought out by Microsoft. So now you have a 4-year plan that was also interrupted by several cataclysmic events. To me, it seems totally plausible that Fallout 3's remaster was just cancelled. But what do you do here? Does Bethesda come out and correct a leak, or are fans just left wondering for the next several showcases if we'll finally start to see something about that Fallout 3 remake? And you can apply this to basically everything in the document. Almost certainly some of these plans and timelines have changed, some in dramatic ways, and some may even be coming out even sooner. Who knows? Maybe the Fallout 3 remaster will be revealed in 2024. And as such, I think when it comes to Bethesda specifically, there's going to be an issue with consumer expectations when it comes to their events now. People have heard about the Oblivion remaster, the Fallout 3 remaster, and a new Doom game, and they're going to be wondering where those are at every single Bethesda showcase for the next several years. And you better believe if they're not revealed in a timely manner, people are going to get upset. That was the public statement shared on Twitter, but a more lengthy internal memo from Phil Spencer was also leaked by The Verge. Today, several documents submitted in the court proceedings related to our proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard were unintentionally disclosed. I know this is disappointing, even if many of the documents are well over a year old and our plans have evolved. I also know we all take the confidentiality of our plans and our partners' information very seriously. This leak obviously is not us living up to that expectation. We'll learn from what happened and be better going forward. We all put incredible amounts of passion and energy into our work, and this is never how we want that hard work to be shared with the community. That said, there's so much more to be excited about, and when we're ready, we'll share the real plans with our players. In closing, I appreciate all of the work that you pour into Team Xbox to surprise and delight our players. In the days and weeks ahead, let's stay focused on what we can control, continuing the amazing success of Starfield, the upcoming launch of the incredible and accessible Forza Motorsport, and continuing to build games, services, and devices that millions of players can enjoy. It has to be incredibly frustrating if you're somebody working on some of these major titles, and maybe even were planning a special announcement around them and all of that was just stolen from you. I mean, okay, in fairness, it was stolen from them by their own company who made a catastrophic mistake, but still, as a developer, I can only imagine how brutal this must all feel. But via this, we were also able to see a bit into the reality of some of the plans from Microsoft. It seems like Phil Spencer at one point was interested in more major acquisitions, mentioning both Valve and Nintendo as potential acquisition targets, as well as of course ZeniMax, which they did acquire, as well as Warner Bros. Games. And even quite relevant to this channel, we could see before the acquisition that Starfield was planned as a PlayStation and Xbox release, now officially confirming that Microsoft is the one who made Starfield an Xbox exclusive, because yes, somehow people still didn't believe that. In the parentheses, we could also see that apparently in 2020 there was a lack of next-gen work done on Starfield, which is interesting. It would suggest that for a fairly significant portion of development, Starfield was a last-gen game, despite being planned for next-gen consoles. And overall, we started to see some pretty interesting reactions to these leaks. Some of the leaked emails reveal that Microsoft didn't take Baldur's Gate 3 seriously at all, describing Baldur's Gate 3 as a second-run Stadia PC RPG. And this is definitely one of those quotes that sounds worse than it actually is. It's likely that they're referring to it as a second-run RPG in the sense that it's not launching on Xbox, it's coming to Xbox later. Like, as of right now, Baldur's Gate 3 is not available on Xbox consoles, but I also think some are downplaying that too much, because Microsoft obviously didn't take Baldur's Gate 3 all that seriously based off the fact that they decided to release Starfield on the same day as Baldur's Gate 3. The smaller Baldur's Gate 3 devs did adapt to this and pushed the release date up, which is basically unheard of nowadays. So I'm sure some of the Larian devs are enjoying seeing these stats now, as we are a bit removed. I even did have a few funny responses from devs at Larian around this perception of Baldur's Gate 3 from Microsoft. And we can also see into some of Phil Spencer's reactions to the PS5 reveal. The day the PS5 was revealed, he described as a good day for Xbox. And in the email overall, Phil Spencer is honestly describing just how happy he was after being stressed before the reveal. Basically, the reveal was a huge weight off his shoulders. He comes off rather smug here, saying things like, "Even as I type this, I know I shouldn't, but I can't help myself. We have a better product than Sony does, not just on hardware, but equally important on the software platform and services on top of the hardware. We have the ingredients of a winning plan," which is super curious to look back on now, because despite how much confidence Phil Spencer has, the PS5 has currently sold 10 million more units than the Xbox Series. But now that Microsoft has Starfield, perhaps this gap in console sales will start to close, as we also just learned that Starfield has crossed 10 million players in the first 3 weeks since its release, once again making it the largest launch in Bethesda's history, beating out Starfield for that title. Yeah, it beat its own record that it set a couple of weeks ago. And honestly, the game has been putting up insane numbers. It has consistently been the second most played game on Xbox overall for weeks now, and although the numbers have fallen on Steam, there are still hundreds of thousands of players enjoying Starfield. But even despite that, it does feel like the initial shine of Starfield is beginning to fade for a lot of players out there. Starfield debuted on Steam with a rating in the mid-80s or so. It was roughly around 85, 86, but at points it was higher at 88 and slightly lower. And these reviews were pretty interesting, because a lot of the people leaving reviews on day one for Starfield actually did have a good amount of playtime. Most players got 5-day early access with the premium edition, but during the early access period, you couldn't leave reviews. So a lot of people had already been playing for 5 days at that point once their first reviews were left. So those reviews in the mid to high 80s were from a lot of people with a good amount of playtime, and this was viewed as a huge win for Bethesda. One of their games debuting with a very positive rating on Steam right around release is a huge milestone for the company. But since then, the score has almost been consistently declining. And if you look at the current Starfield reviews for all languages, it sits at just 72% positive, now only being regarded as mostly positive compared to very positive previously. And honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be shocked if the score ends up falling under 70. Definitely seems like that is possible. It's been gradually shedding points over the past couple of weeks, although we might see a bigger shift once the holiday players do come in. I know though, to a lesser degree, it's a similar story with the review scores. Starfield's Metacritic score on Xbox has now dropped to an 84 after pushing up to 90 around release. This largely due to some of the later reviews to come out which have been dropping the score, but the PC score does remain quite high here. And just intangibly, you could see the sentiment shift reflected in the community. Following the release of Baldur's Gate 3, there was widespread sentiment that Starfield had a legit chance to top Baldur's Gate 3 and Zelda to win Game of the Year. But something I've noticed is in the week since release, it seems like that has largely faded. Now, this isn't to say that Starfield is a bad game, because nobody's really saying that, but rather it seems like as players have put more time in, many regard Starfield as a good game with flaws. It's not necessarily Bethesda at their best, but it's still Bethesda doing pretty good. And honestly, I feel pretty similar. For a long time, Starfield was a good enough game for me. It didn't need to be the game of the generation for me to enjoy it. It just needed to be that familiar Bethesda formula that I love so much, and on that front, it delivers. And for me, Starfield isn't even in its final form yet. That will come once modders can fully dive in with official mod tools. And although I'm sure there's going to be some console warriors that are offended by this, I honestly doubt Microsoft and Bethesda care all that much. There are a ton of people out there that paid $100 for Starfield Early Access, and by all accounts, this game is breaking records for the company. It definitely falls short of perfection, but it's still an incredibly fun and engaging game being enjoyed by millions right now, and it's doing crazy numbers on Game Pass. The beauty of Game Pass is it lowers the barrier to entry so much that you just need a consistent stream of pretty good content, and as long as you keep those subscribers happy and keep them subscribed, you will find success. And when it comes to Xbox overall, it seems like that's their victory condition. They really care about Game Pass subscribers and making sure those are high enough. And on that front, it seems like Starfield is doing super well. And just recently, we got an interesting commentary on Game Pass subscribers as this metric for success. One of the FTC lawyers showed Phil Spencer this Xbox chart. Phil Spencer described how this is really more a chart focused towards their hardware team, and although being at 100 million Xbox Game Pass subscribers by 2030 does seem really good, Phil Spencer doesn't really agree, saying, "I can fairly safely say that if we do not make more progress than this off of console, we would exit the gaming business. If this were the outcome, I don't believe we'd still be in the business." When you ask me if I agree with this chart that the light green and blue, depending on what colors you see there, would have to be much larger, much earlier, I would say by fiscal year 26 or 27 that we should be in that position, or we'd have to make a different decision with the business. But yeah, those were all the follow-ups on the recent major Xbox and Bethesda leak. But thankfully, we also have a bunch of good news today as Phantom Liberty reviews are here, and you can check out my review right now.